Now, India is attempting to track down people who attended a gathering of Muslim religious leaders after 24 of them tested positive. As many as 1,500 people from across India, as well as from other countries, were at the meeting in the capital, New Delhi. 700 had now been sent into quarantine, while hundreds more are in hospital. Let's talk to our correspondent now, Elizabeth Puranam, who's in New Delhi. Elizabeth, how was this meeting able to take place under the conditions imposed by the government, which are among the strictest in the world?
So, Martine, it was allowed to take place because it actually began on March 13th, before the lockdown and even before the curfew was in place. So it was a two-day congregation of Islamic preachers, as you say, from India and around the world. But after the congregation ended, a lot of people, we think around 1,500 at least, decided to stay on at the mosque's accommodation. And by the time Prime Minister Modi announced that there was a nationwide curfew over a week ago on Sunday, 2 days before he announced the lockdown, he also announced that all buses and train services had to stop, and these people say that there was no way for them to get back to where they're from after that, stranding them there. And we've since had, as well as those numbers that you mentioned of 300 taken to hospitals, 700 put in quarantine, 6 Indonesians who attended the gathering have since died, Martine, in the southern state of Telangana, which they traveled to after the gathering. And we've also had one cleric in Srinagar, an Indian-administered Kashmir, pass away. That was last week, and people related to him have tested positive for coronavirus. So there is a lot of concern around this mosque, which is very much being seen as a hotspot. Authorities in Delhi are now converting a 60,000-seat sports stadium into a quarantine facility, really expecting the number of cases to go up.
Right, Elizabeth, and what is the situation more generally around the country?
So, Martine, there are over 1,100 cases around the country now and something like 32 deaths. The big story here, though, over the last week of the world's biggest lockdown has really been the big tragedy that the lockdown has created for India's poor and millions of migrant workers in India. There are something like 120 million people in India who work in different states to where they're from. And we've seen hundreds of thousands of them walking hundreds of kilometers to return to where they're from after losing their jobs, no longer being able to pay rent. And as I said earlier, all bus and train services have been cancelled. And in the last few days, we've heard local media, human rights groups saying something like at least 22 people have died making these journeys because of starvation, because of dehydration, or being hit by trucks while walking on highways. So that's the situation. We've had the government clamp down even harder on people crossing state borders, and some state governments have had to set up quarantine facilities where people are traveling to make sure that they stay, because there's a real concern that all of these people moving from the cities to rural areas could be carrying the virus with them.
Right, OK. Elizabeth Puranam, live in New Delhi. Thank you.